is Ashley Whitt, and I'm a photographer, and I also make videos, short videos, and sculptural books. And this is a new series of work that I just started, which I explore using color photography. I've been working in black and white for the last few years, and so this is a little bit different from some of my previous work. But I wanted to create a self-portrait using one body part. So these are my eyes, and I held them open like a Clockwork Orange style, and then photographed them, and then collaged that over a wallpaper pattern that I made in Photoshop. And I made the wallpaper pattern by photographing a piece of stationery and then manipulating it in Photoshop and changing the orientation of the flowers and the pattern that it created. So the background is this wallpaper, and then the foreground are these eyes that are being held open but cannot see. So the image on the left is an inkjet print on luster paper, and they're really experiments to kind of play with. They're both using similar imagery, but I wanted to see what it looked like to have a straight print versus these are photocopies that are torn apart or spliced apart, actually. Like, cut them with an X-Acto knife and then stitch them back together. So I used a sewing machine, and each of the strips of paper has been flipped, or sometimes I cut out eyes and then sew them back onto the paper. But it's really an interpretation of self-portrait during COVID, thinking about like these repetitious days that we spent in quarantine and watching the news over and over again, and kind of like being numb to it at a certain point. So that's kind of what I was thinking about with these two pieces. And then I also started making moving stills or video pieces that are short and they don't have any sound to them. I've been really inspired by the Dada and Surrealist movements of the early 20th century, and I started watching a lot of Dada films by Man Ray and Marcel Duchamp and Maya Deren. And so these are short videos that I made that are just kind of my interpretation of dreams or nightmares. So there's, I think, 5 different clips. This one is stop action animation that was made using cutouts from this imagery over here on the left. So these are video pieces, and then these are 2 new sculptural books that I made. I've made sculptural books for about 10 years now. I went to Texas Women's University and I studied bookmaking with Susan K. Grant, and so it's like deeply ingrained in me at this point, and I always make books. Like every show I have a book in the show. So I've been really into making accordion books for the last couple of years, and so this one is wallpaper, the wallpaper that I made in Photoshop. And when I think about wallpaper, I think about like patterns and I talk to my therapist a lot about like, well, she defined this, it's the default pattern, like your default that you always go back to, like an alcoholic goes back to drinking, like that's their default pattern. And so we've talked about like my default patterns and things that I come back to in my own life. And so I think of the wallpaper as being a metaphor of the default pattern. And in previous series, I've used photographs of the wallpaper in my childhood home, but now this is a creation of a wallpaper like that doesn't really exist. So I'm kind of trying to make these more idyllic places, and I'm not sure if it's really coming across if they're like idyllic or if they're more nightmarish, but I'm still working through that. So that is my work.